Welcome back to another episode of the Vendo podcast. I'm your host, Darren Saul, and today we have a very special interview with the CEO of Elevate Brands, Ryan Gnesin. Elevate Brands is one of the premier Amazon aggregators in the space today, and they recently closed on a $55 million round of funding to help acquire and scale Amazon businesses. Most of our audience isn't familiar with the aggregator business model, but we're going to change that today by talking with Ryan about how it all works. So Ryan, how's it? Welcome.
How's it?
Exactly. Nice fellow South African. I love it.
There you go. Well, it's been a while. I mean, I left there in 96. So it's been a while, but the accent is kind of held. So there you go.
Yeah, I always say I changed my accent so everyone could understand what I'm saying here in America. So there you go.
Exactly.
But absolutely. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself and Elevate Brands?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I grew up in South Africa until I left. I lived there till I was 14. And then I spent 10 years in Sydney. And then out of Sydney, I got a job with a commodity, the world's largest commodities trading company. It's called Glencore. So I was based in Switzerland for a year at the head office. They then asked me to go down to Jakarta, Indonesia. So I went down there in 2008, which was sort of just the beginning of where the commodities super cycle was about to peak. And that was a pretty cool experience. I ended up being down there for 8 years, running the Southeast Asian desk for Glencore. And by the middle of 2016, I'd had enough of living on an airplane and trading commodities. And I decided I'm going to resign from that career and go do something else. And so I went down, I just moved to New York. I had some friends in New York. I thought it would be fun to go down there and look to buy a business or start a business. I wasn't quite sure, but you know, I was going to a bunch of trade shows and a bunch of conferences and just trying to figure out what grabbed my attention. And you know, I met a guy who was running this, you know, $10 million Amazon business, and with him and like a couple of virtual assistants. And I thought that's pretty interesting. And it was an Amazon business. And I was always fascinated by e-commerce because I just, you know, like from a macro perspective, there was, you know, I could just see that there was nothing. It was so obvious that e-commerce was going to continue to grow. I mean, there was just no way it could go backwards because the shopping experience was so much superior to brick and mortar. So I always liked e-commerce. And then this Amazon thing really piqued my interest. Because, you know, in my previous year, I'd never even purchased anything off Amazon until I got to the US, right? I didn't have it in Indonesia or at the time in Australia or anywhere else I'd lived. So anyway, I went to an Amazon conference and I found what was really interesting to me was there were a bunch of sellers. I realized it was this highly fragmented market with hundreds of thousands of these third-party sellers. You know, and you would describe them as like, I guess, mom and pop. Like it wasn't like super sophisticated PE or M&A money in those days. Right. And I thought that was interesting because there were a lot of these guys running really successful businesses, and yet there wasn't a lot of sophisticated capital yet in the space. So it felt to me like that was going to come, and I liked it. I thought, let me just get started, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do or how the business is going to evolve, but I'm going to start somewhere, and then I'm going to just kind of see where it takes me. So I started with what I thought was the lowest risk way you could sell something on Amazon and just tested. And I bought a bunch of shoes. I went to a Marshall store and I bought a bunch of shoes out of Marshall. I bought literally a bunch of Nikes, put them up on Amazon, and they sold within a matter of 2 weeks. And with like a 40% ROI. And I went, that's really interesting. Because if you could figure out how to do that at scale, you could build a really big business doing that, right? And I went and calculated, well, how many Marshalls are there around the country? And Marshalls, for those who don't know, is like a discount retailer, right? Like they sell like closeout inventory. And then I went to Nike factory outlets on like a Nike Friends and Family Day. And I went and backed up a truck and loaded the truck full of Nike stuff and put it on Amazon, and it just sold like crazy at like 70% ROI. And so, you know, slowly but surely, we started to realize there is really a business to be had here. So we hired 20 people and, you know, bought a bunch of Toyota Sienna minivans, 2008, and, you know, would send the guys out shopping every day and buying shoes and sticking it up on Amazon. And it was a nice little trading hustle. And then over time, after doing that for about 6 months and realizing, okay, well, now if I just meet some distributors and wholesalers, I could buy the same amount of inventory as it would take 20 people a week to buy. I could buy that by myself on a spreadsheet, before lunchtime, right? And so like it became far more efficient to do the wholesale approach. And we did that for about 2 years, right? Our second year in business, I mean, we were doing like 15 million in revenue and pretty, decent profit margin. And then in 2019, it occurred to us that, owning your own brand is what really is a much more exciting proposition for us. And so we acquired our first Amazon brand. We actually bought it. Instead of starting, we actually acquired an Amazon brand at the end of 2019. And then in early 2020, we decided we're going to launch a brand and we're going to see how the two strategies compare. So we launched a brand early 2020. Turns out our launch was a huge success and sort of shot the lights out. It was, we did $2 million in 3.5 months. And that was a big success. And so then we decided, okay, well, let's get much more focused on this private label thing versus the the reselling business. That we thought that would make more sense. So we started pivoting and focusing our attention towards the private label, and we acquired several more businesses in the second half of 2020. And then, as you pointed out, we raised a much bigger chunk of capital, $55 million, which some of that was debt, some of that was equity, and now we've got about 60 people on the team. We've got about 20 brands, and we're growing pretty fast at this point, and that's what we're doing.
Well, look, a lot of exciting things there to unpack. First off, as the aggregator space has grown, right? You've got the Thrasios, the Brandeds, and all these guys. I mean, there's been about $2-3 billion worth of capital roughly raised here. What sets Elevate apart? What makes you guys different? What are you guys doing to innovate in the space to attract a lot of these brands?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, look, the first thing is that we're actually sellers. Like we started out as sellers.
Right.
As far as we know, we're the oldest company of the companies that are buying other Amazon businesses or aggregators. We've been operating on Amazon longer than any of them, right? And so like that gives us really strong sort of operational expertise. We've had our Amazon account shut down 3 times, and we've got all the scars, and we've been dragged through the mud by Amazon, and the whole story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you've been around for long enough, you've probably had a few horror stories on Amazon. So we've had all of those experiences, and are stronger for it, I suppose. And so because we're sellers, we also relate very much to other sellers. So if someone wants to sell their business, we take a very sort of gentle approach to it. I mean, like we understand that this is someone's baby, right? There's a very, very strong emotional connection that people have to their business. And because we're sellers and we've been there, we know what questions to ask, we know what they're looking for, and we're very good stewards of the brand, right? And so, we've got a great track record. It's another thing that we can point to where we can say, we're not just ex-Wall Street guys who came with a bunch of money and decided to start buying Amazon businesses. Like we've been in the trenches, we understand the game inside and out. We've been to all the Amazon conferences. We know many of the people, the guys in the space, done all the courses, right? And so we're good stewards, and we've got a good track record at growing these businesses post-acquisition. And we take a very sort of open and transparent and friendly approach to it, and there's no pressure sales. And, we like to say, sharks belong in the ocean, not in the deal room, right? And so there's more than enough opportunity. And if someone wants to just chat with us, we love to chat. If someone wants to sell their business, great. If they want to sell the business to someone else, that's okay. We want to be good stewards and good partners. And then the last piece in terms of what makes us, we think, differentiated is, we have world-class branding people on our team now. So it's one thing to operate these businesses. We're applying, our CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, is a world-class branding person who actually did not come from the Amazon world at all.
Right.
And so we're taking some of these brands off of Amazon, building a community, marketing them off Amazon, Shopify, and Facebook and whatnot, and building community and building real brands. Not every brand is like that, but a bunch of them are, and we're pretty proud of that fact. And that's, we're doing some pretty cool and fun stuff.
Well, with those deals, like when you're talking to sellers, because it's great that you actually provide some insights, whether they do a deal or not. Have you, when you've acquired some of these, have you ever brought that talent in house? Like, have you brought those sellers on to work at Elevate or stay on with the business?
We've had a handful of people who've come and joined us. The vast majority of sellers have preferred not to join, right? So it's entrepreneurs who've just preferred to, what's interesting actually is the trend that I've noticed in the last sort of 3 or 4 months, more so than when we first started, was every single seller. I mean, for example, we bought 3 businesses just last week. And so every business we bought in the last 3 months, I've noticed that almost without fail, every seller is saying, when you ask them, what are you going to do with the money? They're going straight back into start another Amazon business, which I think is kind of interesting. So it's an exciting time, and if you're an Amazon seller, it's a great time to be in the game.
No, absolutely. And with your kind of scale, right? So if you're managing 20, 30, 40 businesses, what do you find some of the challenges to scale? Like, is it inventory, right? In terms of purchasing inventory, sourcing, do you have your own factories now? You're scaling supply chain? Do you have your own fulfillment? Curious to talk operationally, like how you're scaling the business.
Yeah, so it's a good question. The bottleneck shifts. What you notice is as you grow your business, the bottleneck is constantly like moving, right?
Right.
So like, first it's people. So you got to go really focus on like getting people. And then when you get enough people, you realize, hang on a second, we need more process and systems here because all these people are involved and we need some structure. Then you go work on the structure and then you realize, hang on a second, now it's supply chain. Because now, the supply chain and probably the most complicated piece of this business is actually the supply chain. When you're buying businesses at scale, some of them have their own 3PLs and some of them have these, they just have very different ways of doing supply chain. And because for the most part on Amazon, it's pretty standardized, but the supply chain tends not to be as standardized. So that's a big challenge. And we've just hired a guy, Muzi Palmieri, is the ex-Lenovo head of supply chain there. And so, serious veteran of the game. And he's coming in and helping us so we can really kind of scale much faster. Otherwise it's just a question of like constantly just like iterating and improving every little piece and just pulling those levers such that you can grow those brands and trying to do that as efficiently as possible. These are, as your viewers would know, that these are not operationally simple businesses to run at scale.
Right.
And you really require strong operational chops to do this at scale efficiently and grow the businesses, right? So.
Yeah, well, we're more similar than you think in the sense that we actually started our business as sellers. Right. Yeah. In the distribution side of the business, we scaled it like you 25, 30 million. And then we decided to pivot to more where there was more of a need we felt to help people manage their businesses on the platform because like you said, accounts getting suspended, listings getting taken down, best practices, media buying. Everyone was looking for magic hacks and magic bullets to do things. And you didn't realize that at the end of the day, to be successful is just do it better than everybody else the right way. So
there's 100%. There's a Rockefeller quote that I re-looked at the other day, and it was something to the I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something to the effect of, success comes from doing common things uncommonly well. Like most people in the industry know what the tricks are, like know what the things to do are, right? Like we know what it is, we know how to do it, but it's just doing them a little bit better than everyone else,
right?
And just finding a way to just optimize each thing a little bit better and making those incremental improvements. That's kind of what, over time, compounded, that's what sets people apart.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. Again, it comes down to execution as much as it does all the strategy and all the process, but execution is what's going to set you apart on the
100%.
What about international? Do you guys do much Amazon international business, or is it?
Yeah, so Europe, we do. I mean, Amazon Canada and Mexico is something we've been doing for a little while. Yep. Europe is something we've now started doing as well. We're not yet in Japan, which hopefully will come soon. Australia, we already have some operation in Australia. So yeah, we are doing international, and we expect that will continue to grow over time.
What in terms of like just the current state of e-commerce, right, and marketplaces, how does Elevate view the status itself? I mean, is Amazon still going to be the target acquisition model? Are we going after Shopify, Walmart, other platforms, or just strictly Amazon?
For now, it's Amazon, right?
Right.
Over time, we think that will evolve. But for now, it's like Ray Dalio likes to say, you can do anything you want in the world. You just can't do everything.
Right.
Right? And so, you can do whatever you want. You just can't do it all. So
Yeah.
you've got to pick something and do that really well. And so we've decided we're going to focus on Amazon, do that really well. We take some of the businesses we buy off of Amazon. So we go in, we take a business that's on Amazon, we put it on Shopify, and we do other stuff. But in terms of acquisition, we have some businesses that are doing some non-Amazon business, but typically our businesses are doing above 70% Amazon, and then maybe there's some 30% Shopify, Walmart, et cetera.
So you are going like bricks and mortar retail, like you develop the brand out and you'll take them offline as well?
Yeah, that's right.
Got it. Okay. What do you think makes a great prospect for you guys in your deal flow? Like, what do you look for when you're looking at Amazon sellers? How are you prospecting, the gold mine that is 450 million SKUs on Amazon today?
Yeah, that's right. So, the first thing it comes down to is like a great product. So that's us is the most important thing, is just a really great quality product. And so typically that means like good reviews, right? So it means high star reviews, high rating, and also, a high number of reviews ideally, right? And we prefer it if a business has a review moat of some sort.
Right.
Although that's not always critical. That's our preference. Typically these days, when we started we started very small. Our first Amazon acquisition was like $300,000 acquisition, right? Now we're buying much, much, much bigger businesses, and kind of the smallest business we'll buy today is probably sort of $1 million of revenue, there or thereabout, probably the smallest today. And so that's important. At the end of the day, we have a whole list of criteria we look for, but at the end of the day, it's sustainability of earnings. Like, we just want to look at a business and we want to get comfort that this business is still going to be successful in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time. We're not interested in something that got a sugar hit from COVID or a fad product. We want something that's sustainable. And then, of course, we also score it if it has upside potential, where we think we can improve it and optimize it and grow it and take it to other channels. If we think that if we have strong conviction over that, we'll give it a higher score as well. And so, yeah, that's how we do that.
So, and sticking on that topic, how are your deal structures kind of structured? Like, what is the typical, is it of a multiple of EBITDA, of revenue? Are you seeing certain average of multiples now come out in the marketplace?
Yeah, it's a multiple of EBITDA. The average business today is probably, the way we structure, typically there's an upfront component and then there's like an earn-out component. So maybe it'll be 70% upfront, and the upfront average multiple is probably 3.5 times EBITDA. Right. Depending on the size of the business, depending on the category, depending on a whole bunch of different factors, that's a broad average. Some businesses are 2 times EBITDA, some businesses are, but that's probably the average, 3.5 times. And then there's an earn-out component as well. And so, like, when you take into account the earn-out component as well as the upfront, it could end up being 5-6 times all in.
Wow. Well,
provided you grow the business. Yeah.
Do you guys ever just like do partial investment and say, hey, but with like a caveat, there's got to be a full sellout later down the road where the seller's still running the business?
We're open to it. We haven't yet done it, but we're open to it. So, if a seller felt strongly that they want, most sellers are happy because they have an earn-out component.
Yeah.
And so that earn-out can also be, it could be 30%, 20%, 10%, 40%, the earn-out can increase 50%. And so the seller gets upside that way. But if someone felt strongly that they didn't want to sell the whole business, we're open to that and we're pretty flexible.
Are you seeing any sort of pattern as to why someone wants to sell, or, why most of these sellers are selling, other than, hey, I'm going to sell and then start another business? But are there any other like trends?
Listen, there's always a million reasons why someone sells. Right. They're tired, they broke up with their partner. There's always a million reasons, but the most common reason we're seeing at the moment is someone goes, great, like the multiple has gone up a little in the last 12 months. I just came off a COVID run, so I got a nice kick in my sales. I mean, let's just say, for example, a business is doing $1 million of revenue, right? Mm-hmm. That seller may be doing $250,000 of EBITDA, let's say, right? Well, if you're doing 250 of EBITDA, typically you're not taking 250 home, right? Because you're reinvesting a bunch of that into the business, right? And put taxes aside for a second. You're reinvesting it to grow. So maybe you're taking 100 grand for yourself, 80 grand. Well, if you can now go sell that business and you can sell it for 4 times, right? Now that's $1 million. So it's 10 years worth of earnings for you. So that's a strong value proposition for a seller. So we're seeing a lot of guys and girls coming to the market and saying, this is a great time. My brand is doing great. Who knows what the future holds? Let me get an exit. Let me get out. And I'll take my $1 million and I'll put 50% into an investment property and a bunch of other stuff. And then I'll go and reinvest into another Amazon business and do it again.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And as far as with, the ton of different companies now coming into the space, are you finding it more difficult to get deal flow? Is it easier? Are more people now open to sell? Like how are things trending in the space given the competition that's ramping up?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty competitive now. It has become pretty competitive. At the same time, we're getting more referrals than ever. So, a lot of the sellers who have sold their business to us, when they have a friend, because they're typically, if you're a seller, you're plugged into other sellers in the industry. And so we found that sellers have been referring us their friends are then coming and selling the business to us.
Right.
Or someone, hears us on a podcast and comes and chats to us. So we've got a pretty strong pipeline of acquisition opportunities at the moment. And hopefully it'll stay that way. But it's interesting because the number of people wanting to buy businesses is increasing, but the number of sellers is also increasing. So there's this supply demand. It seems to be somewhat balanced at the moment. I don't know which one's going to outpace the other, but the Amazon third-party marketplace is $300 billion today. And most forecast that it's going to go to 500 billion within the next 5 years, right? And we think it'll get to $1 trillion within the next 10 years. So, with more, I mean, all that demand brings more sellers, and all the sellers bring more buyers, and the buyers bring more sellers. And so it's this very beautiful, virtuous flywheel cycle that Amazon has working so well for it.
But do you think because of that, and you and I have experienced this in our past life in terms of accounts getting shut down, things like that, and Amazon really owning your business in a sense, do you think there's a threat to the business model a little bit just because of that, like Amazon really having that much control over a lot of what these accounts do?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty comfortable with the risk. I mean, this was one of the when we started our business, this was one of the biggest concerns we used to have, right?
Right.
And the way we look at it today is we just can't see any scenario let's break it down. We can't see a scenario by which Amazon third-party marketplace disappears. It's been core to the strategy.
Oh, sure.
Bezos since 97 has been talking about the everything store, huge variety, low prices. There's no way Amazon themselves could hire enough people to go and put 450 million products on the platform. There's no way. So they need third-party sellers if you want to be the everything store with low prices. And the third-party marketplace happens to be one of their most profitable business units. So there's no logical, rational explanation for why they would kill the third-party marketplace. So then you have to say, okay, well, what would they kill your business? And our experience is we've had our account shut down 3 times, and 3 times we've got our account reinstated because we always play by the rules. If you break the rules and you do something dodgy and you sell counterfeit or you do black hat or you get fake reviews and you get shut down, okay, don't be surprised. Right. But if you do everything by the book and you do everything by the rules, even if you get shut down, you're pretty much likely to get, I've rarely heard of someone who couldn't get back up if they did everything by the book, right? So our view is, and also our business is well diversified. So, we're even less concerned because even if one account, God forbid, got shut down, well, right. You got others.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What, just of all the brands that you've acquired, right, and the deals and stuff, and you and I talked about this before we started recording, is there any company like product that you use in your everyday life? Like that's your favorite, or you don't have to say the brand, but just like,
We sell,
is it is it a spatula? Is it kind of like,
do you guys have any, do you guys have Trader Joe's out there? So,
of
you know,
course. Yes.
yes, you know, you've got everything but the bagel, you know, that everything but the bagel mix.
Yeah.
We bought a business that sells everything bagel seasoning. It's the same. It's very similar to the Trader Joe's stuff. So we bought a business that sells that, and I use that. You know, I put that on my eggs for breakfast every day, pretty much. So, so it's a great product.
That's fantastic. What would you say in terms of internally at Elevate, right? The team you're building. Would you say like operationally, you guys have scaled nicely? Do you think media buying is where you guys excel? What do you think the best value add, or what's driven the most growth for the brands that you brought on, right? Because I know some of the other aggregators, they'll tout, hey, we grow a brand 150% in 12 months or whatever it is. So can you talk a little bit about the success you've had with the operations growing a brand?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there's no one single thing. I mean, honestly, I mean, the thing we're most proud of is our culture, right? I mean, we've got an amazing team where it's super like performance driven. So we got everyone who's really hungry, but also like highly collaborative and friendly and kind and genuine. And so we've got this very special magical thing happening at the moment where, you know, we're just very proud of the culture. Everyone's motivated, but also like, you know, really working together as a team, right? And so like that's important. But in terms of like levers that you can pull to optimize, it really depends on the brand. I mean, we have a playbook of hundreds of things you can do to optimize a brand post-acquisition.
Right.
And so we've had some brands, for example, where, you know, you buy the business and the seller never experimented with the price for, you know, for the 3 years that they owned the business. And so, you know, we came in, for example, one of our businesses, and they had 70% market share in a given category. And we thought, well, if you increase the price, you know, there's probably like a degree of price inelasticity that you're not going to see much change. But we increased the price a little bit, sort of almost doubled our margins. But at the same time, we added new video, new content, new thing, explained it better, infographics. We also added new SKUs, so size, color variations, and we saw, you know, a massive uptick both from the increase in sales and the increase in margin. Other businesses, it's pure branding and creative. Other businesses, it's just optimizing supply chain. Other businesses, it's the SEO and the PPC. Other businesses, it's just doing a really great job on customer service. So, and other businesses, a combination. So it really just depends on the business. And we look at each business on a case by case. What's the low hanging fruit? What can we optimize first? And then we have the sort of 90-day plan, 180-day optimization plan to really try and drive growth.
So I know you're focused primarily on Amazon. I know we mentioned this earlier. I'm just curious, you know, as what the future holds for Elevate, eventually branching out from Amazon. What is your take, just you personally? How do you see kind of the retail landscape, the evolution of e-commerce as it fits in there, right? COVID has really expedited consumer behavior as it relates to e-commerce across the world. So yeah. I'm just curious. I mean, that presents a huge opportunity for your business space. How do you see it playing out?
Yeah. Look, I think the marketplaces are going to continue to dominate, right? In my view, because, you know, the customer acquisition cost versus lifetime value, the proposition of a marketplace who can acquire a customer and then keep that customer coming back again and again and again, you know, that marketplace can outspend any direct-to-consumer site, you know, for acquiring a customer. So we think the marketplaces will continue to grow. Amazon is pretty much where the game is today, with, you know, close to 40% of e-commerce. I think Walmart is a bit over 5%.
Right.
You know, eBay is a little under 5%. I think Walmart just overtook them last year.
Yep,
and then you've
that's
got,
right. Yep.
You know, you got Wayfair and Best Buy and Target and Costco. You know, you've got some of these other smaller platforms that are much smaller, but all growing. And so, you know, we hope that they all continue to grow. And then of course there's Shopify, which, you know, Shopify grew, you know, tremendously. I mean, 150% growth last year. They're now 40% the size of Amazon.
Exactly.
2019, they were 25% the size of Amazon. So Shopify is gaining a lot of traction too. We just see it as all good things, because like we'll go where the customers are.
Right.
And so we're excited by that. I think social shopping is an interesting one too. China, social shopping on China accounts for like $350 billion worth of revenue. And in the US, it was like, I think like 10% of that, maybe, not even. So right. Social shopping on Instagram, for example, I think is a pretty interesting trend to watch.
Yep.
And we're not doing a whole bunch on there yet, but we're going to start, but we are paying attention to it. I'm going to start doing more and more stuff over there. So, yeah, I mean, we're pretty excited about it. I mean, e-commerce, there's just there's no scenario by which I can see, even though e-commerce has grown a decade because e-commerce went from 16% to 27% of retail penetration in the last 12 months. Well, even with that growth, I still can't see any way e-commerce in the next 5 years is going to be any smaller than today. It's going to continue to grow. So we're pretty bullish.
Yeah, no, you're spot on with that, because WeChat, I think, in China there, and it's amazing how people are just shopping differently and have already adapted. It's funny. I was talking to one of our teammates earlier today, and she made a great analogy, which is everyone keeps saying, okay, Walmart.com is maybe a few years behind Amazon.com, and this one's behind that one. But I would say Amazon is probably 5 or 6 years behind what China's doing in some scenarios, right? As relates to scale.
It's very interesting. And, who knows, like whether the US consumer will adopt the same sort of shopping habits as the Chinese consumer.
Yeah.
There are nuances in the way business is done, but it does seem like it. I mean, it does seem like it's going to, I mean, the Chinese, it's fascinating. I mean, the Chinese e-commerce market is 3 times the size of the US. And they've adopted certain things way faster. I mean, like payments, for example. No one walks around. My brother lived in Shanghai for 10 years. I mean, he never walked around with a wallet for the last several years.
Right. Yeah. Well, so everything's done through the app. I mean, it's seamless. But the supply chain and logistics and the last mile delivery that they do across that country is incredible.
It's pretty amazing.
Built out. Yeah, it is. Amazing. It's fascinating. It is.
It is. Agreed.
So Ryan, look, I could talk to you for hours about all this stuff. You've been really generous with your time. I appreciate it. Before I let you go, how can people reach you?
Best way is probably via, first of all, LinkedIn. Ryan Gnesin, Gnesin. LinkedIn is great. I always respond there. Or email me, ryan@elevatebrands.io.
Perfect. And check out Elevate Brands online. I think you can check out on your website. You have some good information there too. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us today, Ryan. And as always, to the rest of our audience, remember to protect your brand and sell more.
Thanks very much. Great chatting with you.
Likewise. Thanks, Ryan.
All the best. Thanks.